January 24, 2023. A 106-page document drops online at precisely the moment it can do the most damage. In 2 days, Adani Enterprises is set to close a $2.5 billion stock offering, the largest follow-on public offering in Indian history. The title of the report, How the World's Third Richest Man is Pulling the Largest Con in Corporate History. Its opening line, we have uncovered evidence of brazen accounting fraud, stock manipulation, and money laundering at Adani, taking place over the course of decades. Within 1 week, $68 billion in market value had evaporated. Within 1 month, $150 billion. The man at the center of it all, Gautam Adani, first-generation billionaire, son of a textile trader from Ahmedabad. At his peak, the second richest person on the planet. But the Hindenburg Report wasn't just a short seller's attack on a stock price. It was a map of something built over 25 years. To understand why this mattered, you have to understand what Adani had become. Not just a company, a national myth. Gautam Adani was born in 1962 in Ahmedabad. He dropped out of college at 18, moved to Mumbai, and started trading commodities from a rented room. By the mid-1990s, he had a port, then a power plant, then coal mines, airports, data centers, defense contracts, and green energy gigafactories. Adani Enterprises went public in 1994. Over the next 3 decades, the group would list 7 separate companies: ports, power, transmission, gas, airports, green energy, and the flagship itself. In the 3 years between 2020 and January 2023, the average stock price across those 7 listed companies rose 819%. 819% in 3 years, when Indian benchmark indices rose roughly 50% in the same period. By January 2023, Adani Group was valued at $218 billion. Gautam Adani himself was worth an estimated $120 billion, the second richest person on Earth. He addressed global audiences from Davos to Singapore. Indian newspapers ran profiles comparing him to the nation's post-war industrialists, a builder of essential infrastructure in a country that desperately needed it. The story sold because the infrastructure was real. The ports moved real cargo. The coal terminals burned real fuel. The airports handled real passengers. But behind the ports and the power lines, a different structure had been assembling itself, quietly, across jurisdictions, for a very long time. The first warning sign came not in 2023. It came in 1999. Warning Sign 1, Ahmedabad, 1999. SEBI, India's securities regulator, opens an investigation into Adani Exports Limited for alleged stock manipulation. 14 Adani private entities allegedly transferred shares to entities controlled by Ketan Parekh, one of the most notorious stock manipulators in Indian financial history, for circular trading and artificial price inflation. The investigation ran for 8 years. In 2007, SEBI formally barred several Adani companies and promoters from stock market participation for 2 years. 2 years. Then the penalty was reduced to approximately $140,000, a fine, for a manipulation scheme spanning years across 14 corporate entities. The group paid. The markets moved on. Nobody asked, publicly, how 14 private entities had coordinated share transfers to a single market manipulator. That was Warning Sign 1, dismissed. Warning Sign 2 begins in 2012. India's Directorate of Revenue Intelligence opens an investigation into coal over-invoicing by Adani and 39 other importers. The allegation: Indonesian thermal coal loaded onto ships at one price arrived at Indian ports documented at dramatically higher prices. The difference? Hundreds of millions of dollars routed offshore. DRI court filings reviewed by Reuters stated explicitly, Adani entities had grossly overstated or artificially inflated the import value of coal as compared with the export value from Indonesia, with the objective of siphoning off funds to tax havens. Let's pull the DRI's own evidence map. In 2014, 2 years into the probe, investigators traced a money trail from India through South Korea and Dubai to a Mauritius company they believed was controlled by Vinod Adani. Vinod Adani, the older brother, not a listed executive, not on any board, based primarily in Dubai and Mauritius. Hindenburg would later identify him as the manager of at least 38 Mauritius shell entities. 38 shell entities in Mauritius alone, plus additional structures in Cyprus, the UAE, Singapore, and the Caribbean. In 2014, the DRI forwarded a letter and a CD of evidence to then SEBI chairperson UK Sinha. The letter alleged 2,323 crore in improper diversions, funds siphoned through the offshore network. SEBI received that letter, SEBI received that CD, and then nothing. Years later, SEBI would tell India's Supreme Court it had only learned of manipulation concerns in 2020. 6 years of silence. That is the second warning sign, dismissed. But the probe was about to be physically stopped. In 2019, the Bombay High Court ruled in Adani's favor, forcing the DRI to rescind its letters rogatory, international legal requests, to courts in Hong Kong, Switzerland, the UAE, and Singapore. Let that land for a moment. Every foreign jurisdiction where the money had allegedly been routed, legally barred from cooperating with India's own investigators. The DRI appealed to the Supreme Court. The case stagnated. Meanwhile, the Financial Times would eventually piece together what the blocked evidence might have shown. Between September 2021 and July 2023, Adani paid $4.8 to $5 billion to 3 offshore coal middlemen at substantial premiums to market prices. The 3 companies, Lingos in Taipei, Taurus Commodities in Dubai, Pan Asia Trade Link in Singapore. The FT matched 30 representative sailings, showing coal tripling in price as it crossed a Singapore desk. Now here is where it gets singular. The owner of Lingos in Taipei, the Taiwan-based coal middleman, was a man named Chang Chung-ling. OCCRP, sharing documents with the Financial Times and The Guardian, found that Chang, along with UAE national Nasser Ali Shaban Ali, secretly held at least $430 million in Adani stock at peak, rising to approximately $3 billion as recently as 2023. A single person, Chang Chung-ling, was simultaneously an offshore coal supplier billing Adani at inflated prices and a secret shareholder benefiting from Adani's rising stock. One linchpin connecting both alleged schemes. The mechanics, BVI shell companies managed by a firm that paid a Vinod Adani company for advisory services. The money and the shares moved in a circle. The fund's management paid back into the Adani family. Hindenburg's analysis of trading data found that in several Adani-listed companies, 30 to 47% of annual delivery volume was accounted for by these suspected offshore stock parking entities. That matters because Indian securities law requires that a minimum public float, stock held by genuine outside investors, stays above a threshold to maintain a listing. Artificially inflated prices held by connected proxies can create the appearance of a real market. By August 2022, a Fitch Group subsidiary called Credit Sites had begun asking different questions, not about share ownership, about the debt. Total Adani Group debt, 2.3 trillion rupees, approximately $28.8 billion. Credit Sites warned the debt-funded expansion could spiral into a massive debt trap and flagged extreme key man risk. Market shrugged. Adani Group issued a rebuttal calling the Credit Sites analysis categorically erroneous. The stock kept climbing. That was warning sign 3. Now we reach warning sign 4, and this one requires following a specific paper trail, because in 2015, a woman named Madhabi Puri Book and her husband opened an account with a fund called IPE Plus Fund 1 in Singapore. At the time, she was a private citizen, a former senior official at ICICI Bank. The fund, a Mauritius-linked structure. The same structure, Hindenburg would allege 9 years later, used by Vinod Adani's network. On March 22, 2017, 3 weeks before Madhabi Buch was appointed as SEBI whole-time member, her husband Dhaval Buch wrote to the Mauritius fund administrator, Trident Trust. The letter, a request to transfer the couple's investment in the Global Dynamic Opportunities Fund into his sole name, removing his wife from the records. 3 weeks before she became a securities regulator. When Hindenburg published that specific document trail in August 2024, it cited it verbatim. The current SEBI chairperson and her husband had hidden stakes in the exact same obscure offshore Bermuda and Mauritius funds, found in the same complex nested structure used by Vinod Adani. The Supreme Court's own expert committee had already noted, in May 2023, it is evident that SEBI has drawn a blank in this investigation. A blank, after years, after the DRI letter, after the CD of evidence. Madhabi Puri Buch denied all allegations. She said the investment was made years before any regulatory role was disclosed where required, and that the fund had no connection to the Adani matter. One anonymous broker, banned from Indian markets, speaking to Hindenburg on the record, described the dynamic this way: they know about it, they personally make their money, and then they would like to ignore it. 4 warnings: a 1999 circular trading scheme resolved with a $140,000 fine, a 2014 DRI coal evidence package delivered to SEBI and ignored for 6 years, a 2019 court order blocking the foreign evidence trail, and a securities regulator with an investment in the accused fund structure. The email that should have ended it, the DOJ indictment, was still 4 years away. But first, 2 days after Hindenburg's report dropped, there was a $2.5 billion problem that needed solving immediately. January 24, 2023, Hindenburg publishes, Adani Group's FPO opens in 48 hours. Within minutes of the report's release, Adani stocks begin to fall. CFO Jugashinder Rabi Singh issues Adani's response within 24 hours. The report is a malicious combination of selective misinformation and stale, baseless, and discredited allegations. The rebuttal ran to 413 pages, but it did not address the core Mauritius fund ownership questions, and the markets noticed. On February 1st, Adani canceled the FPO. $2.5 billion returned to investors. The largest stock offering in Indian history pulled. The financial system reacted faster than any regulator. Citigroup's wealth unit stopped margin loans against Adani securities. Credit Suisse stopped accepting Adani bonds as collateral. Norway's sovereign oil fund, the largest in the world, divested entirely. S&P Dow Jones removed Adani Enterprises from its sustainability index. By the end of February 2023, Adani Group had lost $150 billion in combined market value. Gautam Adani fell from 3rd richest globally to 30th in under 4 weeks. Nathan Anderson, the founder of Hindenburg Research, working from New York with a small team, had just moved markets more than any Indian regulator had in a decade. India's Supreme Court ordered SEBI to conclude its Adani probe within 90 days on January 3, 2024. It declined to order a CBI or SIT investigation. Adani publicly called it truth prevailing. Then, in June 2024, Adani's own CFO described some SEBI regulatory notices aimed at the group as trivial, seemingly preempting their severity before proceedings had concluded. It was a remarkable thing to say publicly. 2 months later, Hindenburg dropped its second report. This one targeted the SEBI chairperson directly. August 10, 2024. Then came November 20, 2024. Brooklyn, New York, a federal grand jury unsealed a 5-count criminal indictment. United States v. Adani et al. Case number 24, Crim 433. 8 defendants, including Gautam Adani himself, and his nephew, Sagar Adani. Sagar Adani, Gautam's nephew, executive at Adani Green Energy. Prosecutors alleged he used his cellular phone to track specific details of bribe amounts promised to Indian government officials. The alleged scheme: bribing Indian state government officials to secure solar energy supply contracts designed to generate more than $2 billion in projected after-tax profit over 20 years. The alleged bribe total: more than $250 million promised to Indian state government officials. $250 million promised to government officials to decide who got to supply electricity to the Indian state grid. FBI Assistant Director in Charge Dennehy said it plainly. Gautam S. Adani and 7 other business executives allegedly bribed the Indian government to finance lucrative contracts designed to benefit their businesses. Adani Group denied the allegations. A spokesperson called them recycled allegations and a concerted bid by Soros-funded interests supported by a section of the foreign media. In 2025, the civil SEC charges against Gautam Adani were settled. Without admission of liability, Gautam Adani agreed to pay $6 million. Sagar Adani, $12 million. The criminal charges remain pending as of this reporting. The Adani Group continues to operate. Its stocks have partially recovered, and SEBI's probe has produced no public finding of manipulation. So what do we actually have? Let's trace the full architecture, because it only becomes visible when you look at it all at once. A 1999 circular trading scheme that cost $140,000 to settle. Offshore shells in 38 Mauritius entities, accumulating 30 to 47% of delivery volume in listed stocks. Coal invoiced through Taipei, Dubai, and Singapore at prices that tripled in transit. A securities regulator allegedly holding stakes in the accused fund. And a $250 million bribery indictment from a New York grand jury. The playbook isn't unique to Adani. It's a specific configuration, a conglomerate with genuine infrastructure assets providing legitimacy, offshore structures routing money in layers too complex to untangle quickly, a regulator too compromised or too slow to act, and a political environment where the company has become too integral to the national story to be questioned. What broke the cycle wasn't an Indian regulator. It wasn't the DRI's coal probe. It wasn't the Supreme Court's 90-day order. It was a 12-person short-selling research firm in New York with a 106-page PDF. That should be a discomforting fact for anyone who believes regulatory capture can be solved from within the systems being captured. The Supreme Court Expert Committee said it plainly in May 2023. SEBI drew a blank. Not because the evidence wasn't there, the DRI had mailed it a decade earlier, on a CD. Ask yourself this: how many other infrastructure empires, in India, in Southeast Asia, in Eastern Europe, are operating the same playbook right now, at an earlier stage, in jurisdictions where the short seller hasn't looked yet? The Adani case is not finished. Criminal charges remain pending. The DOJ indictment names 7 other defendants beyond the Adanis. And somewhere in the offshore architecture, in the 38 Mauritius funds, in the blocked letters rogatory, in the Singapore invoice channels, the full accounting hasn't been done. Next month, I'm digging into another infrastructure giant whose debt load looks eerily familiar. Subscribe so you're there when the floor drops. And tell me this: when executives settle SEC charges without admitting guilt and walk free while the system moves on, is that justice? Or is a fine just the price of doing business? I want your answer below.